People think because I can make them laugh on the stage, I will be able to make them laugh in person. That is not the case at all. I am essentially a rather quiet, dull person who just happens to be a performer. That is Rowan Atkinson describing himself, and the people who know him say it is accurate. He is one of the most recognized comedians in the world. Edmund Blackadder, Mr. Bean, Johnny English, and almost none of that recognition maps onto who he is in a room. This is the story of how a shy, stuttering boy from a Northumberland farm became a global figure, and what it cost him along the way. Rowan Sebastian Atkinson was born on the 6th of January 1955 in Gosforth, England. His father Eric had studied at Oxford and ran a 400-acre farm alongside several other businesses. The family's relative comfort traced to Rowan's grandfather, Edward, who bought 200 acres of land in Western Canada for $6, farmed it for 10 years, returned to England, and invested well enough to build a fortune that included a chain of cinemas. Rowan was the youngest of 4 brothers. The eldest, Paul, died in childhood, leaving Rodney, Rupert, and Rowan. The boys helped on the farm from an early age. There was no television in the house. Education was the household priority. At 8, Rowan was sent to the chorister school in Durham. Teachers described him as a shy boy with a slight stutter and an unusually expressive face. Academically, he was unremarkable. His math teacher said he could not remember him at all. If he had played rugby or cricket, it would have been different. What the school noticed was what happened on stage. He performed in George Bernard Shaw's St. Joan at 11. The headmaster described it as a standout performance. His classmates had their own observations. Rowan's facial features, protruding eyes, prominent ears, expressive mouth, were unusual enough to attract nicknames. Dopey, Zuni, Moonman, Greenman, Grumman. He did not treat this as persecution. He used it. His appearance became the foundation of his earliest comedy. At 11, Rowan transferred to St. Bees on the west coast of Cumbria. The school had minimal connection to popular culture. When Rowan was 12, his parents finally bought a television, well-timed for the late 1960s peak of BBC comedy. Monty Python's Flying Circus became a formative obsession. By his early teens, he could recite large sections from memory. At St. Bees, he was frequently seen with a screwdriver in his pocket, setting up lighting and sound in the school theater, then watching from the back and thinking about standing on the stage himself. His physics teacher remembered him as entirely average in class and exceptional on stage. Whenever Rowan stepped into a character, the stutter disappeared. His most discussed school performance was Mephistopheles in a production of Faust at 14. The headmaster told him he had seen no better performance and encouraged him to consider entertainment seriously. Rowan was not yet thinking along those lines. He finished school in 1972 and enrolled at Newcastle University to study electrical engineering, graduating with top marks. He continued to the Queen's College, Oxford, for a master's degree in the same subject and began working toward a PhD. Oxford was where everything changed. In 1976, Atkinson met Richard Curtis, a philologist, and Howard Goodall, a musician. Curtis later described his first impression of Rowan performing. He did a monologue about driving, followed by the thing he does now, where he mimes and talks at the same time. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. It was pure genius. The three formed a creative partnership that would produce some of the most successful British comedy of the 20th century. Curtis and Atkinson began performing together at Oxford, Curtis handling the verbal material, Atkinson providing the physical side, using his face in ways that required no translation. His most popular early sketches involved a man chasing a beam of light across a stage, a pianist performing without a piano, and a drummer without a drum kit. In 1976, they performed at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Before going, a review had appeared calling Atkinson the next John Cleese. He used it as an excuse to write to the agents of his comedic idols, inviting them to Edinburgh. Richard Armitage, who represented Cleese, attended. He noticed 2 things. Atkinson did not rush off stage, so his applause lasted longer than anyone else's, and roughly 90% of his material was nonverbal. Armitage became his agent. In 1978, Atkinson's Edinburgh show Beyond a Joke transferred to London's Hampstead Theatre. John Cleese attended and later said, "He was making people laugh with some material I would have paid money to avoid." Peter Cook said, "It is impossible not to be funny when you are around the man." Producer Humphrey Barclay signed a contract for a television pilot within 6 months of Rowan leaving university. In 1979, he performed at The Secret Policeman's Ball for Amnesty International, produced by Cleese. Atkinson performed his schoolteacher sketch, taking attendance with elaborately absurd student names. The audience knew it well enough to respond in unison. When someone in the crowd shouted, "Present!" at the wrong moment, Atkinson looked into the audience and said, "In the teacher's exact register, I can order you to." It stopped the show. Real recognition arrived with Not the 9 O'Clock News, a television parody of political news also starring Mel Smith, Griff Rhys-Jones, and Pamela Stevenson. It won the Silver Rose at the Montreux Television Festival and a BAFTA for Best Light Entertainment Program. At one point, it generated genuine household arguments. Some wanted the real BBC 9 O'Clock News, others wanted the parody, and the show occasionally had to move to 9:30 p.m. as a result. Success made Atkinson famous. Fame made him uncomfortable. Stephen Fry said, "Rowan has not an ounce of showbiz in him. It is as if God had an extra jar of comic talent and, for a joke, gave it to a nerdy, anorak-wearing northern chemist." Atkinson described himself as a performer with a comedic slant and avoided public events. He lived in a London flat, fixing the wiring in exchange for reduced rent. Before Not the 9 O'Clock News had finished its run, BBC producers were already interested in a sitcom with Curtis and Atkinson. The concept that emerged drew on an unlikely source: The Hitler Diaries, published in 1,981 inches, The Sunday Times, which reframed history from an unexpected angle. Curtis and Atkinson used this as a prompt. What if you rewrote British history as a comedy? The result was Blackadder. The first season, set in medieval England, was filmed on location at Alnwick Castle in Northumberland. The scale created practical problems. No live audience meant no real-time reactions to calibrate the comedy against. The tone was uneven and critics were harsh. Atkinson and Curtis both acknowledged the result missed its target. For the second season, they rebuilt entirely. Filming moved indoors to 3 sets. Ben Elton replaced Atkinson as lead writer. Howard Goodall wrote closing songs for each episode. The action shifted to the court of Queen Elizabeth, with Miranda Richardson in the title role and Stephen Fry joining the cast. Atkinson later described the change. "We went from a very extravagant, location-based, semi-film-like texture to something we just had to make much more effective, much funnier, and much cheaper." The second season was a marked improvement. Seasons 3 and 4 followed, with Hugh Laurie joining in Series 3 as a dim-witted prince. The fourth and final season, Blackadder Goes Forth, set in the trenches of World War I, is the most remembered. The comedy ran against an increasingly grim backdrop, and the final episode did not end with a joke. Characters went over the top. Audiences cried. In 1990, the show was named Best Comedy Series of the Year. The character of Mr. Bean had existed in sketch form since the late 1970s. A wordless, self-absorbed man navigating ordinary situations through a combination of ingenuity and obliviousness. In 1989, Atkinson sat down with producer Peter Bennett-Jones and 2 television executives to develop a pilot. The pilot aired on the 1st of January 1990 and drew 13 million viewers. Over 5 years, only 14 episodes were produced. Keeping output low was deliberate. The character needed to stay rare enough to retain his novelty. Atkinson performed almost all the physical material himself. He described filming Bean on the roof of his Mini, driving directly toward the camera operator for a specific shot. "I stopped before hitting him, but what if I hadn't? Or if the brakes had failed? That kind of thing isn't allowed anymore." The show worked internationally because Bean almost never spoke. Facial expressions and physical reactions required no translation. Atkinson described the character as a child trapped in a man's body and said children across cultures share a common register that adults lose. 10-year-old boys from different cultures have more in common than 30-year-olds. As we grow up, we acquire sensibilities that divide us. Bean bypassed those sensibilities. In 1990, Atkinson won a BAFTA for Best Light Entertainment Performer. The 1,997 Bean film grossed over $250 million worldwide. The 2007 follow-up, Mr. Bean's Holiday, grossed over $230 million on a $25 million budget. By the 2012 London Olympics opening ceremony, where Bean performed Chariots of Fire for a global television audience, the character had accumulated more than 98 million Facebook followers. Across platforms, Bean's combined following has exceeded 137 million. Atkinson's career alongside Blackadder and Bean covered considerably more ground than those two characters suggest. In 1994, he played the hapless Father Gerald in Richard Curtis's 4 Weddings and a Funeral, a small role that became one of the film's most quoted sequences. The same year, he voiced Zazu in Disney's The Lion King, a project he initially resisted because he considered himself a visual actor and doubted the logic of casting him in something audiences would only hear. The Johnny English films, beginning in 2003, gave him another recurring character, a British spy whose confidence dramatically exceeds his competence. The character originated in Barclaycard commercials from the 1990s. The films received mixed critical responses but performed strongly commercially. Atkinson's own view of the character was unsentimental. He's just a fairly two-dimensional, self-obsessed individual who doesn't really show any kindness or empathy. He considered that limitation the source of whatever comedy the films contained. The first film grossed $160 million against a $40 million budget. The 2011 sequel grossed over $160 million as well. In theater, he played Fagin in a West End production of Oliver in 2009, earning a Laurence Olivier Award nomination for Best Actor in a Musical. In 2013, he performed in Simon Gray's Quatermain's Terms in a fully dramatic role, drawing critical attention for work that had nothing comedic about it. Atkinson has owned and driven cars with a commitment that has produced a notable number of incidents. He crashed an Aston Martin in the mid-1980s. In 1986, a car he was a passenger in flipped 3 times in Canada. He was wearing a seatbelt and walked away. In 1988, he was fined and briefly banned from driving for doing 114 miles per hour. His McLaren F1 was involved in an accident in 1999. In 2001, he crashed an Aston Martin V8 Zagato at a club event. In 2011, his car caught fire after he lost control and struck a tree. Repairs took over a year and generated the largest single insurance payout in British automotive history at the time, £910,000. In 2007, he co-founded Arch Motorcycle Company with California luthier Gard Hollinger after 5 years developing a custom motorcycle together. Atkinson has said, "For me, it's all about physical sensations, vibration, wind, noise. If I don't race for a long time, I start to break down." In 1986, Atkinson met Sunetra Sastry, a makeup artist on a Blackadder set. He asked Stephen Fry to switch makeup artists so he could get to know her. Fry agreed. By 1989, he had proposed. They married in February 1990 at the Russian Tea Room in New York, with Fry as best man. They had 2 children, Benjamin, born 1993, and Lily, born 1995. In 2013, Atkinson performed in Quatermain's Terms alongside Louise Ford, who was 26 years his junior, and at the time in a relationship with comedian James Acaster. They grew close during the production. In 2014, Sunetra filed for divorce, citing unreasonable behavior. The proceedings lasted 65 seconds in court. Atkinson did not attend. He moved to a £4 million cottage in London. Sunetra received a £10 million property as part of the settlement. Atkinson and Ford began their relationship publicly shortly after the divorce was finalized.